Okay. Pull up a chair, Mike. Hello, everyone. Hi. Hi. Oh my gosh, so many friendly faces that I recognize and are here to hear about what we're doing in the community around opioids. I know it's an issue that has touched so many lives, and even recently over the weekend. So this is a follow-up. I'm Laura Scherbaum. I'm the director of Greater Falls Connections. We are a substance abuse prevention organization that works in this community, and we focus primarily on youth and youth empowerment and ensuring that kids in this community have what they need to be healthy and to be supported and to know that we love them and that we want them in this community so that they can come back and build a better community with their hopes and dreams for this community. This is a forum that we have done community forums over the last few years around opioids and other substance issues. This particular event tonight is a follow-up to our Importance of Hope Forum that we had at the Rockingham Opera House, Fellows Falls Opera House. And a follow-up just to share what's been done in the community, as well as highlight some of the work the youth are doing, and to talk about a conference that some of us in the community went to, and bringing that information back to the community so that we can all be stronger with the knowledge that we have in this community and working together. So I just wanted to make sure to welcome you all and really appreciate that you're here. I also wanted to thank a few folks. Wanted to thank the Bellows Falls Rotary Club for providing the food for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
These folks over here. They have been incredible supporters of this work, and you know, we've been up there a few times to present to them, and they really want to engage the community on this topic. So it's really great that they're here. Also want to thank our co-presenters, Springfield Medical Care System and Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, Turning Point Recovery Center of Springfield, Fact TV, who is recording tonight, and the Rockingham Free Public Library. And we're also grateful that Friends for Change and the Advanced Above the Influence group is here, and you're going to be getting to know them a little later in the evening with some activities that they're going to do with us. So I also need to make some technical announcements. We'd love for you to sign up with your name just so we know that you were here, and share your telephone and email, and then you can also check if you want to be on our email list so you can get updates about what's happening in the community to build up the community and to do good things here. So I'm going to pass that around. Please feel free to share that. We won't share your information with anybody else, so feel safe to do that. And then we also have surveys, so we want to get feedback on how we did tonight and also get information from you about what you'd like to see happening in this community around substance abuse and about building a better community. So with all that said, I'd like to pass it on to Deb.
Oh, why, thank you. We're just going to take a minute to introduce ourselves. I'm Deb Whitkus with Greater Falls Connections, and I'm really excited to be here tonight because we really are trying to bring hope home. Some beautiful, beautiful things have happened as a result of the last meeting. And the hope tonight is that we leave here more committed to make a difference. We leave here with more compassion, more understanding. We're here to engage you and to stretch your heart or stretch your understanding, to empower you, because we believe the opposite of addiction is connection, but it's community.
I'm Kate Lampier, and I'm from HCRS, and I'm going to share a story and some things that I learned from the conference we went to. I'm Lindsay Mack. I am a care coordinator from HCRS, and I'm also contracted to work on the community health team out of Springfield Medical Care Systems.
And I'm Mike Johnson. I'm the director of Turning Point Recovery Center in Springfield, Vermont, and also a person in long-term recovery. And we're here to help bring recovery services and things that we can do to help this community as well. And so we've been down here for a while. Things are starting to move, and I'm getting pretty excited that we can continue with that. And there's some things on the horizon coming up. So like a Recovery Coach Academy and some other things. So I'm looking forward to bringing the community and having more input from the community around recovery and what recovery means. All right, so glad to be here.
And I also want to thank Richard Carrier, who's here with his family again. Gentleman who shared his story of his family at our Importance of Hope Forum. And so I think, again, without your willingness to share your story and your family's experience, I think I can say we wouldn't all be here tonight. So appreciate that sharing, and all of you who share from the heart your experiences, which isn't always easy.
We would like to take a minute of silence to recognize the fact that we have lost another young life this past weekend. And we are connected to the family, and they're really feeling the loss. And I know there was someone else that I'm not familiar with, but we would like to take a minute of silence to honor the lives lost and to let them know we're here and we're going to try to make a difference. So just a minute of silence.
So I think next we're gonna interact with you a little bit so that we can all be here in this space with some intention. So Scott's gonna lead us with some activity.
Hello everybody, my name is Scott Charland. I work with Laura and Deb at Greater Falls Connections. And what we're here tonight to do is talk about hope. So the first meeting that we had back in February was called The Importance of Hope. Tonight's called Bringing Hope Home, so hope is definitely the theme. So we want to know what your hope for this community is. So we're going to just popcorn this out and come up with some ideas. Like for me, other than just general happiness of the community, I would say more hiking trails is something that would be something I would hope for this community, that are well marked, easily accessible for everybody. So I'm just going to throw out hiking trails up here. So feel free to just start shouting out ideas you have or hopes that you have for this community.
Skate park.
Skate park.
Youth involvement.
Youth involvement. I like that one. Youth voice.
He said community garden.
Jobs.
Community garden and jobs. All right, what else?
You can piggyback the job with a connection. I work with the incarcerated population, so the job would have some kind of tie with people coming directly out of jail, so that they could work quickly.
Got it. Other hopes for this community?
More communication amongst each other.
More communication. I like that one. Or Greater Falls Connections, we're supposed to be facilitating some of that communication. Right? Calling us out.
Role model programs,
Role model, mentorship,
mentorship.
right?
Absolutely.
Great. Who else has hopes?
A program for older teenagers.
Older teens.
Youth center,
Well, like,
teen center,
if you're 18 and up, that's what I mean.
Oh,
young
yeah.
adults.
18
For
to 25.
young teenagers, yes.
Like that age range, kind of. And what'd you say, Doug?
Teen center,
Teen center?
also known as the trauma informed. Friends for Change, fully funded.
Trauma informed.
More restorative justice.
Community events.
So it's a
Say
restorative
that a little
justice.
bit louder.
More restorative justice, like going into more schools and teaching higher up classes in business and more cross-class dialogue stuff.
Schools and businesses.
More just skills in general.
Mm-hmm. Skills. I heard another one a second ago.
Community events,
What
such as
community
like
events?
softball leagues or something like that around here.
Yeah, I play in a softball league, but it's in Brattleboro.
Let's get one closer.
Any other hopes?
Sober house?
Sober house?
Karaoke and things like that without having to go to the bar.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Things to do with like,
Sober club.
yeah.
Turning point in Bellows Falls. And when we're done with the mic cloning experiment.
Get to, yeah. Education in the community to help with the stigma.
Yes.
That's a roadblock.
It is.
Emotional coping skills taught at a young age.
Is there a DARE program in this area? I don't even know if that's over.
Well, Greater Falls Connections kind of does that, but it's like it's, you know, for the 90s or the 80s. Wait a second, what's
2018.
2018.
2018.
Showing my age.
Hey, apparently it doesn't
Yeah,
exist anymore.
we
by
just
the
need
way.
volunteers like you.
I see everybody getting their basic.
Basic needs met.
Yeah.
I like that one. I like all of them. One or two more?
More voices in recovery.
More compassion.
More compassion.
Younger voices.
Less judging.
Stretching. And I heard younger voices.
Younger voices for like the government. Like I was gonna piggyback on you, and then someone beat me at it.
Young voices. And like actually decision making.
Yeah.
Decisions. Nice.
More
Last
hou-
chance.
More housing opportunities.
Housing.
More housing. All right. Any others before we turn it over to Kate? All right, that's a great list. We're gonna note these. One of us will probably type them up and put them on there. I'll volunteer myself for that.
Yeah, Scott.
I have a job.
That's
Taking it.
Yes. They usually they have been showing up to all of our things.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, I know they're short-staffed right now, so.
Yep, that projector screen I'm gonna put on is gonna go right into your face.
I might slide over a couple inches.
No, I'm gonna,
This way.
so you're gonna be in the hot seat.
Yeah, but I'm not going in that seat because the projector will be in mine. I learned.
So thank you all for sharing your hopes for the community, and
Yeah.
let's hope we can make these happen. There's no reason, I don't see anything on here that we can't do, so we may as well just do them all,
Yeah.
one at a time.
Well,
For the next, part of the meeting. I'm going to introduce Kate. It's going to be responding.
Yes.
Respond.
Recover and restore.
Restore. So starting with respond. So respond is really about sharing stories, reducing stigma. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
Thank you. So, my name is Kate Lampier, and I am the Director of Adult Services at HCRS. So, we're a community mental health and substance abuse organization. And I typically come to things like this, and I talk about treatment, and I talk about all of the things that we're doing in the community. But after going to this conference in Atlanta, I realized that I needed to do more. And so I'm very nervous because I'm going to share with you a personal story, and I'm a wicked crier. So I have a pocket full of tissues, and I'm going to read so that I don't lose it. But I'm going to start by reading a definition, because this is a definition that has gotten in my way for sharing. It's gotten in the way for a lot of people in accessing treatment and recovery. So Webster's Dictionary defines stigma as a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality of a person, or a quality of a person. A strong lack of respect for a person or a group of people, or a bad opinion of them because they have done something society does not approve of. Just let that sink in for a minute, because that kind of sucks if that's what you're up against when you are simply trying to get help. So, as I said, I am the Director of Adult Services. I don't often share personal stories, but I have a lot of personal stories when it relates to opiates. So there's some that I'm not ready to share, and this one I am. So I'm going to talk about my Uncle Rob, also known as Bones. That was his nickname, for many reasons. So I come from a very close family. My cousins are like siblings. My aunts and uncles are more like parents. I have always felt so very lucky to have the love and support of so many people. My Uncle Rob was the second youngest of 7 children. At an early age, he struggled with substance use. He would use alcohol, pot, and later prescription drugs, and then on to heroin. In my family, you stick by anyone, even in despicable times, even when people do despicable things, and he did despicable things. But we were always very close and cared deeply for him regardless. Through incarceration, major medical problems, and then full-blown addiction, my family was desperate to save him, desperate to see him live the life he was destined to live. One evening in 2004, I was living outside of Seattle, and I got a call from my mom, and my mom was relieved. My mom did not speak about her brother with relief very often. My mom was always terrified that her brother was going to die, and she was relieved because he'd been arrested. And she thought, he's in jail, he's safe. He's going to be safe, at least for now, in jail. And I just remember that feeling in my mom's voice of just feeling thankful that her brother was in jail, because it meant he was going to live, at least for another night, because she never knew. He was in jail, nothing bad could happen, right? He was safe, at least for the night. It was 2 days later when we realized that was not the case. My Uncle Rob was found dead in his cell after suffering complications from withdrawing from large quantities of heroin. His cellmate, who was later interviewed during a full investigation, disclosed that Rob had begged and pleaded for hours for medical attention, saying he was sick, identifying what the problem was, saying he was withdrawing, saying that he was not a healthy man and that he needed help. And he was ignored, according to this his cellmate. And that finally he just laid down, and his cellmate thought that he had finally gone to sleep. The guards had done 15-minute cell checks through the night, and only the next morning did they discover that he was dead. He wasn't sleeping, he was dead. We found out about it a few days after it happened, and of course were devastated at his loss. And that's the end of his story, unfortunately.
That's not a story of hope. I have a lot of stories of hope in my family. This is just a small part of my family's experience with opiates. I have other tales, including the time that my younger brother, who is 10 years younger than me, was revived with Narcan. This is a more hopeful story because he's in early recovery with 2 young children whom I adore. And if it weren't for access to that life-saving drug, he probably would be dead too. So as I get more comfortable sharing, I'll tell more stories, because I took so much away from the conference we went to. One of the most important things that I have to offer is the sharing of my family's stories and the things that we have been through that connect me in a different way. I've been connected to people in drug treatment for a very long time through the work that I do. And I've always had this underlying, like, no, I'm really connected in a different way, but never really felt
I was
like
in Rhode
could say
Island.
that.
I'm so sorry.
And now I'm comfortable saying that, and I'm comfortable saying that with people that I am supporting. I'm comfortable saying that to community. I'm comfortable saying that to you all. And I hope that you will do the same. That was my call to action coming from this conference, was to share more of my story. And I want to give you another definition, because I think that it's an important definition that goes along with stigma, and that is discrimination. So Webster's dictionary describes discrimination as the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things. Stigma is not just how people feel. Stigma is response to discrimination. And there are people with mental health challenges and people with substance use issues, and there are people with all sorts of challenges. And I just want to be mindful that discrimination is real, and we need to be the charge against that, because that's what's going to help reduce people's feelings of shame, is when they stop being treated badly and we have more compassion in our world, then people will it won't be scary to reach out for help. Thank you very much. And I didn't even need my tissue.
Deb and Lindsay, you're going to talk about Narcan now?
Sure. All right. Oh, I thought there was going to be
I think you have the video.
Do you want the video first?
Okay. Yeah, okay, sure. Do you want to introduce the video?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So, while
Tag, you're in.
I'm in. So while we were at this conference, there were a number of speakers, and one of them happened to be the Surgeon General for the United States. And he had some really powerful and interesting things to say about Narcan, including that he was issuing the first Surgeon General's warning in the last 13 years, is that right? So like on the packs of cigarettes, there it says Surgeon General warning. It's akin to that, but it was in relationship to Narcan and the use of Narcan in our communities.
The other thing about what he had to say that we learned is 50% of ODs actually happen in the home. And the more we can get Narcan training and Narcan into folks in their homes, or people who go into their homes, that's our big takeaway. And we hope there is a sign-up sheet here tonight if you're interested in learning more. We'll let the Surgeon General take it away. It's so cool.
I met a young man named Jonathan. Jonathan's father died of a heroin overdose in 2004. His brother died from a heroin overdose in 2009. Jonathan used heroin as well, and finally in 2012, he tried to stop misusing drugs after he was arrested. However, without medication-assisted treatment or recovery support, he could not resist the urge to use. Jonathan's tolerance was low, like a lot of people when they leave recovery, and perhaps his heroin was laced with fentanyl. So like his father and his brother, he too overdosed. But unlike his father and his brother, or Davis, or Aaron, or Rick, Jonathan's story has a different ending. Jonathan's roommate had naloxone and rushed to administer the drug, saving his life. Because Jonathan was alive, he was able to get into treatment. With the help of a peer recovery coach and medication-assisted treatment, Jonathan has now been in recovery for 6 years and is himself a recovery coach. You know, if that's enabling, then call me an enabler. I want us all to hashtag enable recovery. We need to do all we can to give every overdose victim the chance to end up like Jonathan and not like far too many others. No mother should ever have to bury her child, and especially not when there's a life-saving medication that virtually anyone can access. It is for this reason that I am issuing the first Surgeon General's advisory in 13 years to bring awareness to and highlight the use of naloxone. A Surgeon General's advisory is reserved for significant moments in public health when there is a need to call the public's attention to an issue and have a call to action. And since we're losing a person every 12.5 minutes to an overdose, with over half of them occurring at home, and I'm going to keep repeating that to you because it's important. We can't forget about the first responders, but we've all got to be first responders. Over half of these people are dying at home. We must do more. Therefore, I, Surgeon General of the United States Public Health Service, Vice Admiral Jerome Adams, am emphasizing the importance of the overdose reversing drug naloxone. For patients currently taking high doses of opioids as prescribed for pain, or individuals misusing prescription opioids, or individuals using illicit opioids such as heroin or fentanyl, or healthcare practitioners, family and friends of those who have an opioid use disorder, or community members who come into contact with people at risk for opioid overdose. Knowing how to use naloxone and keeping it within reach can save a life. 77% of our overdoses occur outside of the medical setting. I want more Americans, especially family and friends of those who are at risk, to carry naloxone, a life-saving medication. I'm going to talk a little bit about naloxone, and I know most of you all know that, but I also know there's media in the crowd, and I also know that you all are tweeting and Snapchatting and doing all the things that my kids are trying to teach me how to do. And it's important that we do that. Very important that we do that. One of the other things that I talk about.
So you can look for this on Facebook if you want to watch the whole speech, but he also talked about how he's an anesthesiologist, he's an emergency room physician. And he said, if there were any other disease where I put a patient back on the streets without a treatment plan, that would be malpractice. So having people go into the emergency room and not saving them and not having a plan for when they're leaving that emergency room without treatment is malpractice. And so, you know, and this is where there's a lot of stigma around saving people's lives with Narcan. And one of the things that as a community we really need to be talking about and having more access to and reducing that stigma.
The other thing that's also significant is with fentanyl out in the community, for anyone who needs Narcan, you're going to need to have more than one. You might need 3, 4, sometimes I've heard 6. But the state, yes, sorry.
Question, how, and I've heard numerous, if you're like a guy, local to Dallas Falls that died this winter. He's like 300 pounds, and he died. They gave him like 6 shots of Narcan, but like you're only allowed to have 1 at a time. So I don't know.
No, you can.
That's what I was told.
You can administer them back to back.
Right, but how would anybody have that many on them?
Because the way that they are distributing them now, everyone knows you can't just send people off with one with fentanyl out in the community.
A lot of times they're distributed in double packs. You don't
Right.
often.
Okay, well last time I came to
right,
the
people
last
don't
one
often,
of these,
you're right.
it was
right.
only 1 at a time.
People don't often have 6.
Yeah.
at a time. And
Right.
so somebody who needs that many, that person that's near them might not have that much. That's a reality of it.
Right.
A person who, the EMTs might have 6.
Right.
But they do often give double packs, but sometimes it's just one and that's all you've got, and that doesn't save everybody.
Well, it could be enough until the EMTs arrive with more.
Are you also allowed to carry it in your car or in your purse? Like I have it in my house, but
Anywhere.
I don't have addicts in my house.
Keep it.
So it's doing me, it's.
You can keep it in your purse, you can keep it in your car.
Keep it in your pocket.
It generally that didn't work if you kept it in your car because it had a certain temperature range.
Right, right, right.
in.
You have to
Is
be
that
mindful.
still true? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
In your purse is the best place.
We actually do Narcan trainings and we distribute it, and it does come in two in a pack. And it's actually, each one is twice as strong as the old single ones they had.
okay.
But
Cool.
but you get 2 when after you get the training, and so it's important that someone administer the Narcan, but immediately someone's gonna be calling 911 at the same time, because you're gonna need someone to get there. That's not to revive someone and let them continue, because you really should have somebody coming to check them for other
Yeah,
medical
yeah.
issues,
Right.
and so that those trainings are available.
Yep, the
so-
instructions right on the pack say call 911 first.
Right.
You call
Yeah.
911 first and then administer. And I also want to say that one of the things that that struck me at this conference was, in New York City, they had a group of people who were either in recovery or actively using, and they would go out into the community and deliver community education and get information from people who were actively using. And one thing that they talked about was the impact, the emotional impact of seeing your friends overdose, seeing your friends die from overdose, administering Narcan. So much so that some people were saying, I don't want to carry Narcan because I don't want to be a part of that anymore. So I'm hoping to be able to offer some type of debriefing for people who have had to administer Narcan, including people who are first responders and people who are using and have saved their friends, to be able to support people emotionally after having witnessed such a traumatic event. We're not equipped to tolerate that level of fear. And so stay tuned, it's all in progress, but I'm very hopeful that we will be able to offer a kind of I've administered Narcan support session or something. I need a better name, I know, but it's hard.
So I have 2 questions. First of all, is if you only have the 1 or 2 doses, is it better to give those doses and call 911 than to not give it at all? Does anybody know?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's always better to
No,
give it. There's
absolutely.
very few, I'm not a doctor.
Because I know that you could be in that situation
Yeah.
of, well, should I administer this or is it even going to help?
Right.
And so the Surgeon General gave an interesting kind of analogy for the use of Narcan. He was saying, as a surgeon and anesthesiologist working in a trauma environment, when somebody comes into the emergency department from a car accident, the first thing they do is they try to stop the bleeding before they can go and operate if an operation is necessary. And so he kind of compared Narcan to like that stopping the bleeding process. Like it's not going to solve or fix the underlying problems or issues that are going on, but it's going to stop the bleeding so that somebody could then go on to seek treatment afterwards or live essentially. But that's a nice frontline response.
It's also a very low risk drug.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's very low possibility of adverse effects from administering Narcan. It's not like you're going to overdose on Narcan. I don't know the science behind
It's
it, but
reversing the
Right.
effects of the opiates.
Right.
So the
Right.
person that's coming out of the overdose is actually coming down off the heroin really hard. So they're gonna be really upset and really angry and not in a very good mood either.
Right. Not all the time.
Not all the time, but you have to
that
be
you
expecting that
prepared,
too.
Step back just in case there is an
Yeah.
instant
But in
response.
terms of administering it to a person, the risk to that person is
It's nothing.
very low.
Not from
And
the
so yes, administering is the right thing, but call 911 first.
But chances, but oftentimes when that happens is that people are pretty feeling pretty sick because they're in that position where everything's come crashing down. So they're not going to be feeling like being too feisty either because they're pretty ill, But the other piece they were talking about, you got to administer the Narcan, And what happens is, if you got too much fentanyl and stuff like that, as that Narcan starts to wear down, the fentanyl will take over again. So that's why it's so important to call 911, because at some point, if there's been enough in your system, then it will help immediately. It will start to bring the breathing back and get things going. But then it can start losing its effect because of the power of the fentanyl. So it's important that you make sure you make those phone calls.
If you were to administer that to someone, excuse me, would they just like jolt awake? Like,
oh, not right away.
Yeah. How do you know if it works?
They'll breathe. They'll start
They
breathing.
start
again.
breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right away though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take long, you know, within a minute or
They'll
so, you
start
know,
with
but,
purple and blue,
and,
and the color will come back.
And if you, like you were talking about, if you don't have enough Narcan, the other two backups are still rescue breathing and CPR.
right.
I mean, don't be afraid of any one of those, because, I mean, what's the alternative?
And there's no retribution for if you do something wrong with Narcan, or for using it on anybody at any time. And if you use it on somebody who's overdosed from something else, you're not gonna hurt them. It won't do with anything for any other drugs. So, you know, it could be something else that they took. But if you don't know and you administer Narcan, you're not to blame for anything, because it won't do anything.
So specifically heroin and
It-
fentanyl, no other opiates?
No, all opiates. All opiates.
Okay.
But but
Like cocaine
Yeah,
or
it
other drugs
can't,
that walk
and
in.
so you're not at risk for getting in trouble, because there is no trouble. You're absolutely, there's no problem for anybody using it anytime, no retribution from anything. The laws, you're protected by the law, so.
And another thing that we did learn, just because I was reminded by the word cocaine, was that they're seeing a lot of fentanyl in cocaine. And so people who are meaning to use cocaine are inadvertently overdosing on opiates because there's fentanyl in the cocaine that they may or may not have known is in the cocaine. So somebody might be having a cocaine overdose, but really it's an opioid overdose, and so the Narcan
That
saved their
might
life.
work,
Yeah. And I learned that things get cut more as they come up the country, and so by the time drugs get to New England, it's likely that they're cut with lots of different things that are causing all sorts of horrible health problems for people.
So we just wanted to make sure that sort of, as Lindsay was saying, the stop the bleeding response really is with Narcan. And one of the primary things we can do, if you don't do anything else, is to get educated around addiction and the words that we use in our community about other people in our community, so that we can bring them back and we can make them whole in our community. So reducing that stigma and sharing stories and being with people as human beings who are in our community and part of our community, which is why it's so great that all of you are here tonight. The next piece that we wanted to talk about was after response is recovery. How do you recover from that immediate, need to get medical response and treatment? And really the answer is recovery. So I learned a whole lot at the conference. We had a whole group of people from Southern Vermont that came, and it's a conference of 3,000 people from around the country. And we were really fortunate to have some funding where we could bring a lot of folks from Southern Vermont. And so this wonderful group is through the grant funding that Greater Falls Connections got, and I had the pleasure of spending time with them and learning more about recovery. And the things we wanted to talk about with recovery were with families and housing, and also workforce development with recovery. So I think we might start with Lindsay.
So, I saw a lot of great things. I saw a lot of great presentations, but I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the workforce development presentation that I went to. And a couple of other presentations also touched on it, so I'll pull in some of those things as well. But so specifically, there was a presenter there who's from Kentucky, and he'd been an attorney, and he'd had he's a person struggling with alcoholism, and he went into recovery and opened up a recovery center so that he could help other people that kind of had struggles similar to his or different, but struggles with substance use. He was able to work with the state through some Medicaid funding and some special opportunities that were opened up through legislation to create the recovery center that he had. And the thing that was special about his recovery center is that he was using integrated peer support. And so as people were kind of going through the recovery process in the center, they were also assisted by people in recovery that were trained to help participate in groups or as recovery coaches. And so his program, they were also doing medically assisted treatment, and he reported by using that kind of combination of peer support in the programming, they had a 3% diversion rate. And what that means is 3% of the people that were receiving medications were not taking them. So they were either selling them or putting them somewhere else, but they weren't in their bodies. But that means 97% of people participating in that program were actually taking the medication as prescribed. And that's a pretty significant number. He also, out of this recovery house, had programming. There was a school that participants could attend, and it taught them how to use electronic medical records. It taught them how to do some brief counseling and to become recovery coaches and peer recovery specialists. And so once they graduated from the program, if they had attended the school, they were then invited back to work for the center. And so he had a number of people that he highlighted in his slides that had gone through his center and now actually were like this, they were in program director positions and things like that. I thought that was pretty crazy. So I really liked his use of people in recovery to support people on their journey through treatment and into recovery. I thought that was really powerful, especially when we're looking at our own communities, the idea that we could create jobs in that way for people. Like, there's a lot of stigma, and there's a lot of business owners out there I've heard complaining about not being able to find good workforce or good employees. We have a workforce right here, really a large number of people that are willing to work and able to work, and they're also experts because they've been through the treatment and recovery process themselves. One of the other things that was really interesting to me about workforce development was including these peer recovery specialists or something like that. There's other names for these types of positions, but peer recovery support specialists is like in the emergency room. 1 out of 10 people that leave the emergency room with an overdose, if they don't receive any kind of treatment or follow-up, die within a year. Part of the reason is people leave emergency rooms and they're given maybe a list of phone numbers and they're told, like, call these places and maybe that you can get into treatment on your own, but figure it out, good luck. It's really important to have somebody in the emergency room to be able to kind of say, these are your options. I've been through this, or I can explain what this process is to you. I can explain to you how to get in. I can even help you make those phone calls. And after you leave here, we'll meet. There was a program that they worked with, I believe, the police department, where they were going and doing 3-day follow-up. So after somebody left the emergency room with an overdose, somebody was going to their house like 3 days later to check on them and see how they were doing. And if they refused any kind of services at the emergency room, they were given another opportunity, or it was just to say, hey, you know, you were interested in these resources, how's it going for you, do you need any help? I really like that idea. And so they're actually hiring people to work in emergency departments to do brief intervention and referral to treatment. And this is kind of like a nerdy thing, but they had assessments that people could administer to themselves, and so they could kind of figure out what kind of treatment is right for me, or somebody could give them the assessment. It's 10 questions, and your answers on those 10 questions would tell you, maybe I should go to an inpatient facility, maybe I could do an intensive outpatient program, or something along those lines. They were all trained in how to use the electronic medical record, which is huge for hospitals. They could bill for Medicaid, so that it wasn't just somebody kind of taking up space, and how will we pay this person? Well, they can bill Medicaid because they can use the record and they're trained through the classes that they've attended. So those were just a couple of ideas about ways that we can include people in treatment and recovery in the workforce. I know, like, our region is unique and has its own kind of opportunities to include people in recovery in the workforce, and creating jobs isn't actually that difficult when you're just using people to help people do the same things that they've done. The training is really easy.
Thank you. And then next, Lindsay and Mike, we're going to talk about housing and families.
I think it was me.
That was Kate.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So before we went to the conference, Mike and I had been talking about how we could better support a unique population of people who are deeply affected by substance use and stigma, for that matter. And that is parents who are separated from their children as a result of substance use. So that's children who are in DCF custody, children who are being raised by a family member. And we were talking about kind of revitalizing this project in Springfield, which is a home, a recovery home for women who are in early recovery and are working to get their children back. And after going to the conference, we were like, yeah, this is what we need to do.
Right.
So we heard about some models in Kentucky. We heard about some other models that were really, really effective at supporting moms to get their kids back. And I say moms because the numbers support that more moms are working to get their kids back, but certainly we recognize that dads lose their kids as well and are separated from their kids, and that has a deep impact. And so we are working right now to develop a program and secure funding, so don't get too excited because we don't have any money. But we're hoping to get some. We're hoping to get some money, but the project is a collaboration between Turning Point and HCRS, and it is a recovery house, and I'll let Mike talk about recovery, the recovery part of it, which is of critical importance. But there's also opportunities for treatment within the house, so group treatment, family time coaching, parent education, peer-based support, recovery coaching, in order to really line up the supports that a person needs to focus on their recovery in order to get their children back. I have 2 children, and I can't think of anything that would be more motivating to stay away from treatment than losing my children, right? If I talk about what's going on, I might lose my children. That's a pretty big deal. And so trying to make it safe for parents, women, to say, I need help, so that they can get their children back, because the trauma that is inflicted on an entire family when families are separated is unbearable for me to even think about. So if you want to talk about the recovery part of it.
Yeah, so for us, part of it is that we were asked to be part of this project, and partly because we have a transition house, and where people who were early in recovery or just out of treatment and we're trying to get their lives back together. But it's a program that provides recovery while you're there. And to live there, you have to participate in your recovery because that's important. And so that model's been fairly successful. I mean, it's not perfect, but nothing is in the world of drugs and alcohol. But we have, like, people that leaving our places, around 57 to 60% are successful. Some people leave, we don't know what happened to them. And there's some people that go back to incarceration, and there's a few that go back out and use. But the house itself gives a person a foundation, and they have enough time. They have to go to so many meetings. I don't care what kind of meeting, as long as it's a recovery meeting. It can be an all recovery meeting, it can be a spiritual meeting, it have to be, but you have to do whatever part of your recovery, what path of recovery that you choose that you're going to. And they have to do it 4 times a week. And I think it's important for someone to be grounded in the beginning. And so, and everybody in the house gets a recovery coach, and which is someone to help them work on their goals. A sponsor takes you from where you were to where you are. A recovery coach will help you from where you are to where you'd like to go, and to help you one goal at a time. And a number of other things coaches are really useful for. So it becomes a family kind of knit house. The guys and gals work together, and they support each other, and they volunteer at the center, and we do community meals, and we do groups together, and we do events together, and we do a community garden which feeds the house. You work in the garden, you can pick whatever you want, and it feeds our house for the entire winter. But it gives people an opportunity to do things, and we also do like to do fun things too. And So that gives them a foundation. Most people stay a year. We've had a couple that stayed about 2 years. But before they leave, they have a foundation of recovery so they know what to do. One of the things I learned at the conference when we were down there, we went to, what was his name?
Dr. DuPont.
Dr. DuPont. And he was talking about physicians, and physicians who had used medications or drinkers and lost their licenses. And in order to get them back, they had to go through 30 days of treatment, they had to do UAs, and they had to participate in recovery. And one of the things that he was very clear about is the doctors that were successful are the ones that stayed connected. So what recovery is about, you know, you go to treatment and they teach you about where you are, what you're doing, and what happened, how you got there, and they give you some tools to come out with. But the rest of your life is recovery, and it's not one day. It's every day of your life, because no matter how long you wait, the disease waits for you. I can attest to that as a person in recovery. I was at this Atlanta conference, and when I'm standing outside, because I still smoke, which I probably shouldn't, but you know, that's my addiction right now. But I'm standing outside, and there's a liquor store across the street. Nobody knows me down here. I got my own hotel room, and that little voice in my head said, you can walk over here, grab a bottle, and go upstairs, no one would even know. It's like, I wouldn't even have to go to the groups the next day, no one would even know. But I knew, and I had enough foundation in me to know what I needed to do. And I needed to go back inside, I needed to call somebody, and then I needed to change my environment and what I was doing. But there's been times in my life, in my recovery history, where that didn't happen, you know, and it led me back out, you know, and I'm grateful today that I have recovery, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't find it, you know. So the importance of the house is that you have to have a foundation, and you have to be aware of your disease, and that the addiction is always waiting for you. So what do you do to make sure that it's not there? You know, so we want to give these women an opportunity, the best and the most strongest opportunity to get their children back, and that's make recovery first. The other things will happen. We can work on those things as your recovery gets stronger. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen fast, but it will happen. I've had a person in my center, a husband and wife. The husband lived in my house. The wife was living outside the house. They're both in treatment. And she came to the center to visit, and they got together and they were meeting each other. And next thing you know, he moved out, but they both stayed connected to recovery. You know, and they ended up having a baby. They ended up getting married. They celebrated their recovery anniversaries and the baby's first birthday at our center. And recovery does work. I now watch this girl grow. She's going to be heading to the Coach Academy because she knows what she wants. She wants recovery. She wants to help other people in recovery. Being able to give back and share with someone else when you're struggling, when they're struggling, and being able to talk to them and understanding, and them understanding. If you're in recovery and you see someone struggling, you don't have to like yell and scream at them, but you certainly can offer some support. I can see that you're struggling. Is there something I could do? Is there any help that you would like? I can give you some phone numbers. Want to go to a meeting with me? You want to talk to someone? But we got to be available to those other people. I mean, if we can stop someone just from making that one decision, like the one I had outside that door, just for 1 second, you might save that person's life, and you never know that. So I think it's important that we pay attention to that. But that's why this house is important. They'll have supports, they'll have each other, and we'll have recovery coaching, they'll have the support of the house, they'll have the other agencies coming in with other specialists and specialties for them, and a lot of day-to-day living things that people lost sight of and how to do, parenting classes, everything to bring that family back together. And I think that I'm really excited because I really want this to happen, because if we get the funding for it, we're going to set something new and a new precedent where we can continue more of these in the state. And we can do it in other ways too, but we have to make that foundation. So, if you're in recovery, stay in it.
I just want to add to that. Since I've been here in this community, perhaps one of the most heartbreaking things has been to meet parents who are raised in DCF custody having their children taken away. I've been exposed to that story too many times. When you remove kids, you're creating the next generation. The wonderful thing that I love about recovery, especially when you're getting in there early with parents, it's a 2-generation approach. It's the entire family. If our solution is to take children out of homes because of a disease that we don't fully understand, that we don't have enough trauma-informed approaches for folks to be successful, the kids are harmed. And I just have to say, this is why recovery is so important in supporting it. It's trauma-informed, and it's a 2-generation approach. I've seen families like, one of Mike's employees / volunteers, Brindy Cheney, is a person in long-term recovery raising her son, and she is rocking it. And she didn't just save herself, but she's saving her son as well. So I just have to say, everything we can do to support recovery, and especially as a trauma-informed, restorative practice, we gotta do that. Because what we're doing right now is not working. If my sister, I'm just gonna say one more thing. My sister's recovering from cancer. It's a disease that she's had. And there were times when she wasn't able to take care of everything and be there for her kid in the same way because she was sick. Addiction is the same thing. It was declared a disease back in the 1970s. So taking kids away when someone's down versus giving them the support that they need to be stronger when it's an illness, it's just not right. We've got to rethink how we're doing it. And I know there is a role for keeping kids safe, but removing them without allowing the opportunity to restore families in an addiction-informed, trauma-informed way, we got to do it differently.
And the timelines rarely match, right? So a young child is taken into custody and they have 6 months before they have to have a plan, right? You need to be either adopted or reunified. Well, I don't know anybody that recovers in 3 to 6 months from addiction. It's just not, the timelines don't match. And so DCF is very supportive of this program and really wants to do what they can to be able to allow families to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of families, one of the things that we should be working on is working with the whole family, because not just the addict or the alcoholic is struggling, it's the family that's struggling too. And they need as much support as well. To fix the whole picture, you have to fix the whole family. So you can't fix just the person who's struggling, because everybody else has to understand the process. And the families need to understand also where the addict's at, what they're going through, and also how it impacts them. And then all the cards need to be on the table to have these conversations. And I think it's important that we support the families, the siblings, the brothers, the grandfathers, the aunts and uncles, the friends who have people that are struggling with recovery. By God, I got friends that I know are dying out there, and it's like, their families need help, my other buddies need help, because they have their thoughts about how they can fix them. They should just do this. It's like, well, at my age, we all think everybody should just man up and get it over with, but it isn't that easy, because that's not what it's about, and it's important that they understand how strong the addiction is, it's the thing about the guy in the boat, that whole thing.
Okay.
Not to interrupt, and
Yes.
sorry, what you're talking about, that home for moms and keeping their children together, Amy and I were lucky enough to have a very gracious group of people invite us over to Keene. We spoke at the country club over there. And they're actually opening a home like that on the other side of Keene. It's called the House of Hope. Their model house is in Manchester, New Hampshire. We met a mother who's actually going to manage this house, and her daughter, who was 30-something when we met the daughter, was actually allowed, she was the first child in the state of New Hampshire that was allowed to stay in a recovery home with a parent. And their story was amazing, and I can tell you that sitting through a few meetings and then meeting a lot of these people that are involved in starting this house. This is a necessity. This has to happen. Of course, our first response was, why didn't our daughter have that opportunity? And that's hard. That opportunity has to exist, as much for dads as it does for moms. But I can tell you that if you can keep, and I have my mom here with me, and if you can keep a mom and their child together, you can change the world. And so that has to happen. That has.
I agree.
Did you have anything more you wanted to say?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right.
We're talkers, we get pretty passionate about this stuff.
I know, I spent 4 days with these people. In a few minutes, we're gonna get to the youth-led part of the evening, but I wanted to, we have a few minutes if there's any questions people might have about any of that. I mean, yes, we could go on and on. We all were inspired by this, and we're really glad for the opportunity to bring it back to you. So if there's anything that you have questions about any of that, please feel free.
I totally agree with everything you're talking about and about the need for the kind of housing that you're describing. My fear, though, is that given what the state of Vermont has been through with the deaths of young children in the past few years, I hope the community is also thinking about how to balance that with the safety of the children who are in homes that are at great risk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want this movement and this vision disrupted by having the kinds of incidents that could have been prevented, perhaps, I'm not saying only, but perhaps in some cases, by the child being removed from the home. And I agree, and I'm with SEVCA, I'm the director of SEVCA, and we sponsored and hosted the parent educator program in the Springfield area for many years. And I learned a great deal from the woman who was in that role.
She was wonderful. She was wonderful.
She was wonderful. And among those is the acknowledgement of being able to know when the time is right to take the child out of the home, and hopefully only temporarily, but that we have to have a strategy that acknowledges that risk as well, and how do we balance that as a community to...
And our vision is really about supporting those moms to get their kids back. So it is, the design is for families that are already separated. I agree, we need to do so much more interventions before kids are taken out, and we always have to balance child safety, and that's a line, it just is, but we can do it better.
Yes.
We can help families heal, we can bring families back together, we can provide interventions. I worked with a mom once, not local here, who, I was in a meeting, and there's foster parents and treatment providers, and the foster parent was like, I can't have this kid in my house anymore. She's too much trouble. It was all the same reason why this kid was taken into custody in the first place. And everybody said, oh, we can give you this resource and this money, and we can do this for you, and we can do that. And the mom just started crying. She's like, dude, if you'd done all that for me, I probably wouldn't have lost my kid. And that's what we need to do. We need to put interventions in place that keep kids safe and keep families together. We need to know when it's not safe and kids need to come out, and then we need to work our tails off to get families back together, because we're hurting people by keeping them apart. I'll get off that soapbox.
Well, I mean, we have to be strong advocates too, because what happened, in the number of incidents around the state, I don't in any way blame the families. I blame the state for not acknowledging the resources that were needed to do the proper kind of monitoring and assessment and case management. And they acknowledged that too after the horses were out of the barn by creating, I think, 16 more positions at the time and restructuring the whole budget to enable that to happen. They knew there was a time bomb waiting to go off, and I hold the state accountable for not dealing with that until precious lives were lost. So it's advocacy that also has to keep going very strongly, not just in our community, but statewide, to say those resources need to be there because kids' lives are at risk if they're not.
I just wanted to say that if I could advocate for anything, it would be for some of these systems to actually have mandatory training around addiction and recovery. According to the American Medical Association, addiction now is defined as a neurological disorder. And being able to look at people's behaviors through a neurological lens, is this something they're doing on purpose? Are they just being, a bad parent? Or is this a neurologically induced relapse based on the fact that that maybe this person doesn't have a recovery coach yet, hasn't just figured out what their trauma, their triggers were. We've been to a few addiction medicine trainings where we learned, oh my gosh, if you can actually relapse on opioids if you're in recovery and you eat a whole bunch of chocolate can trigger like an overdose, like some really innocent things. Like there's so much. And maybe a few basic things that if we could get integrated into the training, so we're looking at families through the disease of addiction, not good parents, bad parents, poor choices, good choices. I mean, I've known people who've been in recovery for 2 years and had a relapse, self-reported, and had their kids taken away. That's not understanding the disease. And I know I've known heroin-addicted parents who are calling their kids and saying, you better be home for supper. Who are setting limits, and they may be doing other things and they're hiding it and they're sneaking it, and maybe it's an earlier stage in the disease. But if we can recognize and humanize people and look for the strengths, which I know DCF is mandated, not mandated, but their philosophy is to do a strength-based perspective. To do that within understanding addiction as a neurological disorder induced by trauma or other things.
We got to see a really cool woman who was talking about the neurology, and she had given an example where she was saying that when we're hungry, our neurology tells us to eat, and it keeps sending that signal until you engage in the behavior, which is to find food and consume it, and then it stops sending that signal. And she was talking about how, with opiates specifically, that there's the same kind of distress signal that's sent out, like, I'm hungry, I need to eat opiates, and to shut it off. And so you engage in the behavior to get opiates, it shuts it off for a little while, then it turns back on. But I think the most striking example that she gave was she was talking about it being kind of similar to if you're stranded at sea and you're in a rowboat or whatever craft you're in, and you're not supposed to drink the seawater because the salt will dehydrate you and it will speed up your death. So she was saying, you're not supposed to drink it on day 1, you don't drink it. Day 2, you're like, I really shouldn't drink this water, but it's everywhere and I'm super thirsty. And by day 3 or 4, maybe you might start breaking down because at this point your body's like, I need to have water. And you might drink the salt water. And so she was talking kind of comparing relapse to that kind of feeling where your body, your impulse to satiate or to stop that signal is so strong that you do the thing is gonna hurt you. So we were talking about neurology, so.
So I think we are ready to move on to
Sorry.
some activity, and I want to say before we go into that, that I'm really excited about the next section of the event tonight because we are a substance abuse prevention coalition. So that is primary prevention. That is not just talking to kids about drugs and how bad they are, because that doesn't always work. It doesn't usually work. It's really about creating communities where kids feel supported and they feel like they matter, and that they're recognized for what they bring to the community. And in this community, as in many communities, there are kids who have a lot of resources, who get supported, who get recognized, and then there are other kids who probably, have experiences that they can't go to school and talk about. And that creates a disconnection for those kids because of the stigma attached to poverty and drug addiction and all those things that we understand as big social issues. So one of the things that we do as a primary prevention strategy program is that we support leadership among youth in our community through our advanced Above the Influence group. And so we're really happy that we can highlight the work that they do and the work that we really feel is important in order to prevent people from even heading towards the path of substance use and abuse. So with that said, I will hand it over.
You stole my thunder. So I won't say anything. But I would like to have our youth come up here.
And thank you to all the presenters that went to us to the conference and presented.
And there's one really key organization and of course an individual here. First and foremost, Haley Gallendak-Cochran from Friends for Change. She's a true visionary. Support what she is trying to bring about in this community if you do nothing else today. But over here, and Matthew, would you please stand up? We forgot to mention, part of Restoring Community is really supporting the restorative justice, the Greater Falls Community Justice Center. Because if you talk to anybody doing law enforcement or probation, we cannot arrest our way out of this. The answers that we need to have are all about community, empowerment, and restoring. So Matt's been working with these amazing youth who I'll let introduce themselves and let you take it from here, because we want to share, they want to share some amazing stuff with you. Okay, that's it.
Okay, I'm Kieran.
I'm Kara.
Dan.
Jason and Kim.
Woo!
They're here as well.
And I'm Haley, and we are Friends for Change. And we're a youth club, kind of like the Boys and Girls Club, but way better.
Oh, edit that.
In all the right ways. They do good stuff, but we do good stuff too. We're a trauma-informed, democratically operated, play-based after-school summer program. It's a mouthful. Basically what that means is that we do stuff different and it works. And we have some amazing youth, some of which are here and some of which aren't, who are a part of all of the decision-making processes that we make as a club, including what programs we do on a daily basis, but they also have seats on our board, and they are really in charge. I'm just here kind of facilitating, being as much of an adult as I can be, but these guys are really the star of the show. And we want to share with you something that we do as a piece of our model that we learned from the Restorative Justice Center. Before that, I wanted to give the kids a chance to kind of introduce what they feel about FFC, and I just wanted to brag about them for a minute because I always like to do that. This is Dan, and he runs all of our music stuff. So he sets up and coordinates our karaoke nights and our music program. Kara will be running the farmers market booth this year that we'll have at the farmers market, so please come out. She's going to be opening a free clothing thrift shop with stuff that she's upcycled, and it's going to be really cool, and it's free, so 100% free, people can come. Kieran will also be at the farmers market running youth activities. So if you have younger kids, you want to come out. We're going to be playing together. All kids are welcome, and he'll be running that. Jason, not only does he bring awesome authenticity to everything that we do, which I am so proud of, but he'll also be running our teen movie nights this summer. So he'll be coordinating with Fact TV to set everything up, and helping us to vote democratically on what movies we want to watch.
Actually, I have all these.
And Dan, it's Dan using Dan will be setting up the projector. Jason will be coordinating. Kim, our new member, is going to be putting in a mural in our space, which we're really, really excited about. So anyway, I'm done bragging, but I was hoping that you guys could just take a little bit of time to tell everybody, why is FFC different? What is it? What about it is different from other youth stuff that you've been involved in?
How long do we have?
Just a little bit of time. I know you like to talk.
Yeah, huge step that I found from Friends for Change to like what it was at Boys and Girls Club is the everybody has a voice. You know, it's like it doesn't matter if you're 5 years old or if you're 15 or 16. Really, everybody has a voice. You know, that idea that not one individual is running the whole thing. It's like we're all a one group, we're all one unit. You know, that's my bit.
So I've been a part of Boys and Girls Club since 5th grade, and I grew up with a diverse group of kids and starting to get in a lot of trouble with a lot of those kids. And last year was my 9th grade year as a freshman, and I was in kind of a dark, not so fun place. And Haley and her family, first of all, kind of took me in as an individual, but with FFC kind of gave me the responsibility to show people in the community that I'm here and that I can be a leader and that I can actually make a difference, and just changing my life for the better. Thank you, Haley.
So the way I started out is basically I didn't know about FFC for a while, and then I heard about some youth club down below the hospital in Bells Falls, the Health Care Center, and then I went there and said, hey, this looks really fun. So I actually started out as a kid in Friends for Change. I did not start out as a youth leader. I actually went in, got a feel for it, and then I said to myself, hey, this is something I would really like to do. So that's what gave me the encouragement to actually keep going and devote my dedication to Friends for Change.
I think the best part about it is that I've been at Friends for Change since the beginning, and we work with, all of us are trauma informed. Anybody has trauma, and learning about trauma informed and doing circles that we're going to do with you, and really understanding how to cope with these different things and understanding each other. And within 2 weeks of having a new member, you can see people improve drastically in the first 2 weeks. So it's very powerful.
And the other thing is, in FFC, we don't actually have rules. We have these things called agreements. So like, if a kid isn't behaving, we don't just like yell at them saying, hey, stop that. We actually get to the source of the problem and we solve it.
Nice. And we do that through Restorative Justice, that we learn from the Restorative Justice Center. And so today what we want to do with you guys is share with you what we call our circle process, as a way that we get to know each other. And it involves, which I'm sure if you're in Jason and I's group, you'll see, involves really being authentic and showing up and being honest and vulnerable if you're open to it. But it's a space for us to learn about each other so that when conflicts do arise, we actually care about each other. We give a shit about each other so that we don't want to keep causing harm, and we care about solving that harm. So what we're going to do, oh, I'm sorry, I said shit.
Haley, he swore on TV again.
I did it again. I'm sorry. So what we want to do, I know we have limited time, but we're hoping, you guys think we could do 3 groups?
I think whatever you think we can do, we can do.
All right. We're hoping to do 3 groups. So one group will be here with Jason and I. Another group will be here with Kara, Kiernan, and Matt. And then a third group will be with Deb and Dan in the youth little center circle over there.
Okay, so we count by 3s to break it up?
Yes, if you could do that.
Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start over here. You're 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Yeah, you're 2. Matt, Marty.
Yeah,
3. Count off.
1,
2,
1,
2,
3.
2. Great. So I'm with you.
Thank you. Okay. Maybe. And
2,
3. Come on, help her out here. 1,
2. Hi, Kim. 3, 1, 2. Are you guys? 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. 1, 2.
2.
Ron, you're
Three.
in. Okay, I'll get everybody over here.
Over here. If you weren't take this place.
Okay, just come here.
Who's there? All right. So, everybody here? Good, that's okay. We'll talk. Can I say that?
Yes.
Thanks. We're going to talk about what a circle is and why we do it. So, a circle is basically a facilitator asks a few questions. We usually do like 3, and we go around and you guys answer them truthfully, honestly, and vulnerable. Yes. And we have a talking piece, which is going to be our little pig here. And when we ask the question, we give you a minute to think about it. And when you're ready, you put your arm on your shoulder. And if you want to go first, you can raise your hand. And warning you, these questions can be very meaningful and deep. Anybody have questions? Did we get anything?
You can skip if you don't want to.
Yeah, you can skip.
Go first if you want to get it all the way.
All right.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
And so we will just jump right into the questions, and then, yeah, get started. The first question we want to ask is, what gives you hope in Bellows Falls?
Anybody want to go first?
Also say your name. So hi, I'm Haley. So when you're ready, put your hand on your shoulder.
You can talk with him. Be creative.
No, I like the recovery
Speak from the heart in your own story.
A lot of
Tell
recovery.
everybody else's story.
If you don't look for it. I mean, you don't have to look hard, but if you
What
want
gives you hope in Bellows Falls?
You can either pass it in a circle or you can popcorn it. Yeah.
Sure wouldn't put a lot.
Oh, Mr. Bill. No, Mr. Bill. Oh, no. For me is, that the acceptance of recovery in this community and where I think it's headed, and I'm excited about that opportunity, and I feel really good about it. So
What
there's
gives
my
me hope is seeing
something that I'm very passionate
youth
about.
who are
I'm Laura.
judged.
There's so much that comes
or
to mind.
treated less than or
The one
ostracized in
is
those
the
spaces,
aspect
rise
of
above
there was
that,
an
and really
MSN
prove,
thing that
despite
said
that
that
adversity,
was
how amazing and strong and incredible they are.
And then I went to the
so
village meeting and
um,
this was mentioned, but
yeah,
people were
and that
just
gives
like,
me
no,
hope.
we're not gonna let that be.
Things like
And there was just, I don't know,
the
it's called
organization
hashtag, I
of
don't know,
Great
it's
Falls
called-
Connection
If somebody
and
immediately
First Place
paid for
and
it
groups like
and
ATI and Friends of
wanted
Change,
to
the idea of
recommend
being
that.
able to get kids off the streets out of
And I
houses
also
that
went
there are, especially in Bellows Falls.
that day
It gives me hope that they
there's
won't
only
be
2
doing all the things
like
that they are
non-occupied
currently.
storefronts in the downtown.
And what's your name?
So I'm Jason.
Which is really big for a small town.
I'm Richard. What gives me hope in the community of Bellows Falls is that not too long ago, I believe that there wasn't that many people out there that truly cared about Bellows Falls in the community. And I realized that I just wasn't opening my eyes to the people that cared. So the hope is that I'm beginning to realize there are a lot of people that care.
I'm George.
I'm not from here, I'm not from anywhere near here. I moved
Ever
to
since
Bellows
I
Falls
came here
because I really like that about
back
it.
in January, I OD'd last year and
I would say these groups and the Rise House currently where I'm
And
staying.
everybody I've met has really been really cool to me, like everybody.
That anybody can change the
I have
lives of
like 5 people right here that are crazy.
I work at the Rise House and I see young men change their lives every single day.
That's coming in.
I was once in that situation, so I understand that.
I'm Josh.
People can change.
I've been in this town for about a week, but so far what gives me hope is the people that I've met at the Rise program.
Michael, I've been in the community for about 37 years, I guess, and I've seen a lot of good things and I have a lot of hope. And I've worked with a lot of people in town, and I see it every day. And youth group, and I've seen a lot of growth.
So I don't live in Bellows Falls, but I often brag about Bellows Falls.
Just like
I find this, I supervised the police social worker for a while, the person who's embedded in your police department, and the dedication of the people in this community is like I've never seen before. And the hope, despite challenges, is inspiring.
I'm Craig. Like Michelle, I moved here. I'd say something to give me hope in this area is I moved here 8 years ago. That's what I think is a lot of people choose to be here because it is an intact community. There's lots of different levels, and people are not always talking to each other. I mean, yes, I'd like to take credit for it, but I know that he's his own person, and I'm sure. I guess that's what I would say. My experience is by as opposed to a lot of places in the United States.
When you always hear about how kids bow to peer pressure and things like that, this kid, like, I honestly can say, could not care less what anyone else thinks. He is who he is, and he shares that with as many people as possible. He's like, why do you care what they think about you? I'm just lucky there's all these opportunities and people coming together. That's like a great message. Like, I don't worry about
For me, a lot of hopes. Probably being a youth and trying to having groups like this that as a youth I can go to village meetings and learn more about it, and going to things like this and being a facilitator, like being here with you guys is a huge hope for me, and hoping to change our community and this world with anybody. And
I just think that's amazing.
It's definitely biggie and
So,
place that
worked in the community a little over 20 years, lived here for 2. Part of the reason I moved here and what gives me hope is there's such a tremendous pride in this community that I find very attractive, and I think, terrier pride, whatever you want to call it, I see it, I live it. We have a tremendous ability to respond in the face of adversity or tragedy. I've seen that so many times, and what I'm hopeful about is that we can leverage that ability in normal circumstances or when it. So I have hope that we can overcome it.
And I think one thing that gives me
I have hope in the youth of Bellows Falls. I think they're amazing and resilient and brilliant, and I have hope in the community. And coming to the last forum in February rocked my world, lady, and you rocked my world. And I just think this is a resilient community, and I just want to be a part of everything going on here.
it's kind of a weird thing.
hurt people, not like we're going to hurt
Yeah,
people,
see,
but
it took me, I said it
people
like
who
5
are
times
harmed
myself,
hurt other
like,
people, just to
oh.
clear that up.
Misery and joys. That's what I get from that. Sometimes when I'm in a miserable state or miserable spot, I want to say
My name is Heather, and I would say what gives me hope is, I just have to say it, PP, because this is I'm thinking pride and passion, and I just have to say it that way. I agree with what Bill was saying, pride that our community members have for themselves and for our community, and I see that every day. And also passion when we, as a community whole, are faced with some adversity. It's amazing to see people who might not necessarily know one another that well, but when they have a common goal to make our community rise, we do that very well.
I'm Lindsay. I'm not from Bellows Falls. I don't live here, but I do work here.
I know
and
that when I'm thinking
that gives me hope. It's usually when I'm driving home from here. I live in Springfield, and usually I'm leaving right around the time school lets out, and seeing all the families and the kids and people getting off the bus and how happy, like just watching that moment when like the kids get off the bus and they're like running to whoever it is they're running to. That's one of my favorite things in the world, and I love that I get to see that every time I'm heading home from here, and that's what gives me
For
hope.
me, is that people with addictions,
I'm Steve.
as a human being,
Like Lindsay, I don't live in this community,
disease,
I live in Springfield.
they're not bad people, but
Many of the
they're
same
hurt people.
concerns
and
and
do
issues
things because of your addictions that hurt people. And that's the hardest part for people to understand. They're really hurt people
for us to
that hurt
look at and
people.
say, hey, wow,
And it's
maybe
not,
we could do
they're
some of
not
that.
bad
as we
people
feel, because
hurting
we
people
feel is also
intentionally.
looking to
They're people
and
with
ways to be
addiction,
resilient.
consequences.
And a lot of what I know about
Other people.
Bellows Falls in
And
particular comes
and
through
it's really sad.
my
because
wife,
that's
the director of this
part of that
library.
error statement.
And she went through a lot of pain and suffering trying to do good things and have the library do good things, and ran across a bunch of people who were negative and didn't want to support anything that didn't benefit themselves personally. And what happened as a result of that is the community rose up and supported her and turned away the negativity and voted time and time again for positive and hope and moving into the future with everybody being part of the community and making this library something that everybody could turn to as a resource for all the people here. And that experience that she went through and that I was part of gave me a lot of hope for this whole community and for everybody in it. And so I'm just proud to be a part of that.
Kind of gets to the point that we're products of our environment, or products of our experience, and so if we grow up with trauma, if we've experienced things in our life that give us pain,
So the next question we're gonna ask
we
is,
act out and cause pain.
what does the saying hurt people mean?
Pretty much gets it, but more of like being a kid and like being bullied really hard. Than you being like, you know, if I'm getting bullied, why can't I get something more than me to get bullied on? Like I'll bully them. And that's kind of what happened to me is I got physically attacked and bullied pretty hard, and then do the same thing to other kids.
Haley gave me a good quote about all bodies are good bodies, and I take that kind of personally, and I'm thinking about how all people are really nice, and I am a product of generational trauma. And
he's
you
on the
can
sober one.
tell from before FFC
and
that I did not
has
react to anybody, and actually still
been
today can tell that when I'm with my
abusive to
family,
me when I was a
that I
child.
act out
And
very
it's taken me a
not
long
nice.
time
And I'll be
to
triggered completely.
from like going
And
to
you
Allen
can tell
meetings or
I
just regular
hurt
AA
people
meetings,
from
like
being
hearing other
hurt
people's
from
stories
this past
about,
trauma,
you know,
but with FFC and with you
overcoming
guys
that
here,
because they
helping
wanted to
learn
do better
how
for
to
their kids.
cope with it differently and how to take that anger out and help people instead of harm people.
But now that in that saying, I'm disembodied and I feel like I have compassion and I love
I would
and
expand
fight it.
on like
Now, I don't want to
that
fight
it's
it
not
only
just
because of
people
it.
who are
It's a strong
addicted,
person who went through a lot. It's
or
a lot of
intellectually
pain. And it's that pain that
that they'll
makes him act the way he does.
how they cope.
When you hurt people
I
means having
don't, and I'm not trying to offend, but that doesn't make it an excuse.
So,
Because you're hurt, that they.
the term hurt people to me. I usually look at the idea of bullying. If somebody's bullied, they're most likely going to go and do it. Doesn't make it right, but it's gonna happen usually anyways. But it's more, to me, it's more the idea of if somebody's hurt, they're probably going to hurt somebody else to get that pain off of them. And it's not really something that I can really elaborate on because it's as simple as I can put it.
For me,
Alright, this
I
last one is
just, I looked at that.
Another thing we didn't really say is that each question that is,
Because I was
the last
definitely not,
question is to just, you know, gives it a little bit more
Dive
dive deeper into the water.
We're ready.
And
Be ready
So,
to cry.
a lot of you don't
how have
know,
you been
I've
affected by the
experienced
opioid crisis?
an extreme amount of hurt not too long. And I became very angry, very cynical.
Anybody want to go first?
And with the inspiration of incredible.
Oh, months ago.
I realized
I have a couple other
you
children
don't
about
have
it.
to be angry, you don't have to hurt somebody. That's how
And I guess that's how I've been. I don't remember when we started this. A few months ago, it was like, well,
People who are hurt end up hurting people.
me, I don't know Wow,
It's
my
just
life,
being born.
I killed drugs, I know when I overdosed.
It affects everyone.
6 months ago that my daughter was doing.
So my uncle died, and my younger brother is in early recovery. I have a niece and a nephew who were both born addicted to
Yeah, I understand.
one methadone and one Suboxone. My brother-in-law broke into my house and stole a bunch of stuff from me.
Oh, what that
I have a
means to
cousin who
me.
is in jail.
Oh, tell me about it.
I've watched, my parents are raising one of my nieces. I've watched my family just be
Strung out.
okay.
During,
I haven't had anybody close to me, and like close to my family or years trying to get affected by opioids themselves.
As I was hearing, she's on the third most does it.
A lot of rehab last year.
I heard people, it makes
Oh, yeah.
perfect, that's what happens in life. So, I agree with Haley, really, compassion is the way. And listening to people's stories, listening to the hurt people stories, and realizing, I think, through the years of my work, I've been fortunate to realize what.
I think I lost count of how many friends or funerals I've been to the last few years. I'm a recovering opiate addict, and I see people
I guess what it means to me, it's kind of like the answer of how it is when, if people are abused, whether it's physically, emotionally, sexually as children, they tend to have a higher risk of repeating that behavior when they become parents. Or like you were saying with the bullying, as we've seen in the news a lot lately, a lot of these school shootings, the kids have been bullied for years. And I think it's just all about the cycle of people.
I work in healthcare and lots of patients.
Some good interventions can prevent a lot of.
But we also
whether it's
really have to
kids'
completely
journey
redesign
they grew up with
every
a parent.
aspect
Like,
of
people that
healthcare
don't have
to,
addiction look at that and go, well, why would
cope
you do that?
with
You
influx
saw
of people
how it
who
affected
have
someone else.
addiction
But
problems.
there's just such a higher
Almost,
risk
it's
of
more
that
than,
person turning.
it's getting to the point where it's more than half of
while it might
healthcare
not
is
make sense to
designed,
someone
can't
who
cope with
doesn't
that.
have that
There
issue,
isn't the resources.
it's just so common.
There isn't the research.
So I guess to me,
And
it's
there
just
isn't the research because of
the
stigma.
cycle
Healthcare
of
providers
whether
have
it's
stigma,
abuse or
so
addiction or
we have to
bullying
work
or
on that as well.
Uh-huh.
It is just like standing at the base of a mountain
intervention would
without
be a
equipment.
good way to prevent all of
Climate.
that.
Well, I've been affected by the opiate crisis because I've watched it grow in the last 5 years since I've been doing my job. And I watch people come in recovery, I watch people die, I watch people come, go to treatment, go back to treatment, come out of treatment. But I see people that have the opportunity to change their lives through recovery. And because it's about changing your life, the things that you're doing that's causing that to happen. And sometimes it's the simplest things, but we need, there's other things, there's so many things that need to take place to help that. And, I see people talking about the housing situations and need for more recovery housing and more treatment centers and Narcan on the streets. We're trying everything we can, and I know there's, it's the whole community effort, but, it's still happening. And it, some days I hate going to work, but I love what I do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but, and so we gotta continue. We can't stop because there's hope.
I'm in recovery myself, but I've had a lot of family members die from it, a lot of friends watch them die from it. So, yep. So it's affected
So I just want to say thank you guys so much for sharing so openly with us. I think the Friends for Change kids, they do circles like this weekly, try and really build that connection between themselves. Like they were saying before, in case when there does come a conflict in that group, they've kind of built that relationships with each other. So when we can sit in a circle like this and talk about the harm that was caused, and do that in a much more meaningful way, because they have those relationships already established.
We can analyze the situation better.
So the idea that like have when someone's not feeling good, like getting it out, like talking to not just to one person, to multiple people, get it across. It can change people's lives in a couple of years.
I've been affected by it. Anyways, I've grown up watching it. My grandmother lives next door to me, currently with 3 of my cousins, my aunt, and all their children. And all my 3 cousins have this problem, and I've grown up watching them overdose. I've grown up watching them have fights. I've grown up crying over them. I've grown up finding heroin needles, freaking out, not knowing what to do, not knowing who to tell. And I've grown up just a couple weeks ago, they've overdosed in my front yard. And I was told to keep it a secret from my family, so I'm telling you guys instead of my family members. Definitely grown up taking care of the kids a lot, taking my free time, taking care of them. So before I start crying, I just want to thank you guys for being vulnerable and for letting us facilitate and having the honor to facilitate and meet you guys. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you.
My mother, my brother, actually was an alcoholic. And I've never told anyone about this because, you know, it affected me in a way that actually kind of felt like that, you know, hey, she had this problem and like it needed to be dealt with. So every time I talk to her now, she still has my sister. I'm just worried about DCF getting my sister. So I tell her every day, Mom, don't you do anything stupid to lose my sister.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, can you come over here quickly? Okay, so we're going to do a very brief call to action. I hope you feel a little bit more connected to your community, listening through the stories and what folks shared. Thank you, youth, for doing that. That was so amazing. Next stop, let's start bringing these kind of circles to the community on a regular basis. What I've heard was powerful and beautiful. Yep. It will break down the stigma and it'll bring us closer together. Because that's what it's going to take in order for us to beat this epidemic. In order for us to, is it your mom? What's your name? Susie, you're amazing. I'm so glad you're in my circle. In order so we can walk down the street and simply say hi to each other and be a community again. We are Greater Falls Connections. We're here with Friends for Change. We are here with Mike from Turning Point, HCRS, Lindsay from the Springfield Medical Care Systems Center, and Heather Warrius is here, who's the SAP up at the high school and middle school. Since our last meeting, we have started to get the work done. We left that, the forum with ideas and suggestions, and we're on a roll, thanks to Turning Point and all the volunteers. Sarah, quickly, what do we got coming up?
We have
Woohoo, great stuff.
Richard and I.
Richard!
And a lot of the other people in this room are running a CAR group.
What's
which is
that?
Community Action Recovery and Resources. And the CAR group came up with the mission itself, and the mission is to foster an understanding of addiction and recovery through community involvement and dialogue.
Cool.
And it's awesome, absolutely amazing, phenomenal group. And it's
Sign up, there's a sign up
Wednesdays
sheet.
from 6 to 7:30, and anyone in the community is welcome to come. We also are starting a FAR group, which is Family Addiction and Recovery, and that's Mondays from 6 to 7. And that one is starting June 11th.
This is really important because if you're struggling with addiction, having your family on board to support you in a way that gets them to understand and reduce conflict at home, this is powerful stuff.
So this one, you can come if you're a family member, if you're a friend, if you're anything at all. And if you're in recovery, if you're struggling to get into recovery, and you don't have to be a pair, you don't have to be a family and in recovery, you can just be one or the other, or you can come as a team, however you want to come. And then we're having a summer barbecue in June on the 23rd. And anyone who wants to help with that is welcome to sign up. You can be a volunteer for the committee, you can volunteer to help that day. And then we're having in September for Recovery Month, Rock for Hope. Is that correct?
Rock for Recovery, Rock
for
whatever
Recovery,
you want
okay.
to call it.
And that, we haven't picked the weekend yet, but that's going to be wonderful. There'll be music, there'll be food, and there's going to be a walk for recovery that weekend too.
Pretty amazing
Sign up
since
to
the
help with
last,
that as well.
since the February meeting. This is what's community coming together. We can do this. Haley, take it away.
Yay, we're Friends for Change, like you already heard. And we're always looking for volunteers who want to, thanks Ken, who want to get involved directly with kids, but also maybe that's not your shtick. We have other stuff you can do as a volunteer too. Behind the scenes stuff. If anyone here is a great fundraiser with tons of extra time,
Grant writer.
come see us, because we're doing really good work.
Wait, come to us first.
Or what about if you hang out with 1%ers, invite them to come?
Yes. Do you know any of those guys?
They have beautiful big hearts.
Yeah, so there's tons of ways to get involved, and feel free to, you can check us out on Facebook, Friends for Change, but you can also see me after. I'll add you to the email list, and we can just talk about ways that you might want to get involved.
Do you have a sign-up sheet here?
I do have a sign-up sheet, so you can see me
Okay.
picture.
Okay, and GFC, quickly, we have a sheet, please take it, with all the things that we have coming up. We are getting out signs, I will be a parent, not a BFF, which is our underage drinking campaign. If you want to help, or if you want some signs, there's a sign-up sheet there. We're going to do our very first CES Ninja Warrior Bellows Falls, whoop whoop, June 18th. On the new CES playground. It may sound silly, it may sound fun, but it's building community, engaging people who haven't been engaged in a long time and empowering them to start making their neighborhood a place you want to be. Let's see, we have a monthly coalition meeting coming up, the dates on that. Our youth are going to be presenting. We always have them present at our last meeting of the month after school gets out. Did you guys know that? Oh. We did trauma last year. It was amazing. Then Saturday, June 30th, Parkapalooza, a big crazy play barbecue. It is year 7. Sign up over there. The police department opens up the fire hydrant. It's so much fun. We have water balloon fights and egg races. And we'll have our annual barbecue, and we're going to be looking for nominations for local heroes so we can present our ACE award. We have so many this is unsung heroes. And also Old Home Days, if you want to get involved. Our youth have been running the dunk tank. We're looking for some more support around that so we could staff it longer. And maybe even get Sorry?
More Dunkables?
More Dunkables, you know, if anybody knows like a really desirable Dunkable who's not too political, or who has a lot of courage and they're too political.
Well, maybe they are too political and that's why.
Right. Anyhow, there's sign-up sheets for everything. We need you guys to walk out of here and put your name down and your contact information. If you can't do that, that's really the goal here. If you can't do that, please share a story. Please share something you learned tonight. Please talk about these kids. You know, talk about what the beautiful story that Kate had to share. The way cool, geeky information Lindsay had to share. We need volunteers. All of us need volunteers. And I do have to I give you a special thank you.
Oh, we didn't mention one thing.
Wait.
We have a recovery coach training coming up.
Academy.
And that
The
is
Academy,
the end of July going into August. It's the 30th to August 2nd. And there's certain criteria, but you're going to get in touch with Mike in order for that, and there's information about that up there too.
And so once I talk with people, because the people that would be recovery coaches would be working under our supervision and be working with us and in Bellows Falls, and I'm looking for more coaches in Bellows Falls. So, so the criteria, the basic criteria is you have to have at least a year of sobriety, you know, and of continuous sobriety. But it doesn't necessarily limit it to people in recovery. You know, there's also people, we could use people that are family members to work with families. We could use youth that could work with other youth that are in recovery and need support. And there's a lot of openings for stuff, and to use it in various ways. Elderly, there's an issue with the elderly too, because we have coaches for elderly. Vets? And so so if you go to Parks Place, you get my information. It's on the table.
There's a thing up there that has your information and the information.
And you can get in touch
about
with me,
recovery.
and then we can have a conversation, and then we can sign up, and I'll give you the link to sign up, and then there's a code that for a scholarship, if you're working through us, we can get a pretty decent rate on it. So the Academy's a 4-day training, and it's really, really good. It gives you a lot of skills, and you can use it in a lot of different things too. So, and there will be a facilitator training coming to the area soon too. So,
I would just like to personally just acknowledge you, Mike, in your work. We wouldn't be here today if we hadn't made the connection with you.
How many years ago was that? It's been a while. I've been trying to do something.
I don't know. Like I'm such a. You have so sold me on recovery. Like his recovery coach Brandy. She's been doing it for what 4 or 5 years now. She was telling me I think she throughout the course of her being a recovery coach, she hasn't all her mentees have made it through. Could you imagine where we would be? That's the power of recovery coaching. It's in the recovery and the recovery centers. And in terms of advocacy, anything we can do to support their funding would be huge. So I just say thank you so much.
Yep.
You've given so much to this community, and we feel indebted.
Well, this community's given a lot back to me too.
Well, hey,
so I feel part of it because it's different where I come from, and you can ask anybody from other organizations. It's not the same up there as it is here, and we're trying to make our community as intuitive as you guys are down here. But since the first time I've been here, the first meetings, I felt accepted in the community, and it's like recovery is part of change, and change is good. It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, and recovery is a lifelong process, but it can happen. It can happen for anybody. So you never give up.
So the last thing is, please sign up to be on our email list. And
Lots of sign-up
also,
sheets.
we would love your feedback. This helps us get funding so that we can do more of this in the community and support great organizations that are members of our coalition to highlight the great work that's going on in our community. And it also helps us plan events like this and do things in a way that will be the most beneficial for the community. So if you can fill this out, that would be awesome. Even if you just want to talk to me or one of the staff about what you thought was great, what you thought could be improved, that will also help us. So if paperwork is not good for you, we want to get your feedback in any way. And stop by Parks Place anytime you want to give us feedback too. So please stay. There's, I think we ate all the food, so it's great. And there's tons of resources up here, and please feel free to stay, although I'm
Sorry, I'm getting a signal here. We also have a very informal, fun parent support group every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. After you drop off the kids, Coffee Connection at Parks Place. come on by. We know how to laugh.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a good night.